what is the impact of one small mistake by an ops manager going to cost for the company or the agency?
Yeah, there's a couple of very obvious impacts when licensing falls through. And I think why we're building InsureTrek and why we feel like it's so important is there's just enough differences with basically every state that having someone who's just full-time thinking about, hey, what are the weird things about getting licensed in Texas versus getting licensed in Wyoming or whatever it may be, like we provide, I think, a lot of value in InsureTrek by
Hi, I'm Ram Prasad, working on as a partner for building this product called InsureTrek.
Hi, I'm Kyle Hess. I'm the head of product for InsureTrek.
With respect to InsureTrek becoming a multi-industry or like multi-domain licensing platform, what kind of complications are we expecting?
When you start thinking about different lines of business, what some states will require different answers to different questions. So the background questions and those sorts of things might be different. Also, the combinations of what sorts of licenses you can get or what sorts of licenses you need changes from state to state. And so those are a couple of the big things that we're working on as we're expanding out to PNC and thinking about different lines of business. Ultimately is trying to make sure that the InsureTrek continues to be easy to use, continues to be very straightforward to configure, but just gives you the ability to kind of do more and more. And we've run into that. There are certain states that have combined health and life licenses. There are certain states that have different, those things separated. We've got some customers that handle variable annuities and those sorts of things. And so what we're always trying to do is make sure that InsureTrek can do more and more for people, but that it's not then getting more and more complicated to manage. And so, yeah, we're working on that. Any features that you and I have been talking about that you're kind of excited about as we're expanding into PNC and other lines of business?
I think the concept of going away from the license classes and lines of authority into a concept of lines of business, I think is very exciting for me, because a lot of producers really do not want to think, do I have life? Do I have health? Do I have accident? A lot of these are usually bundled in few states, but then some states provide them also individually, but they also complicate that by providing it as a combination, right? So sometimes you have the combination, sometimes you don't, and the eligibility for each of it is different. At the end of the day, a producer should do what they do best, is to go sell. And I don't think an agent should spend their time breaking their head to decide, oh, do I have to click this or click that? And do I have to pay more for this? Because some states do ask you to pay per lines of authority and not at the license class level. If you're self-funding yourself to go manage your licenses, it's a lot of thought process that you need to put and think to see what I'm capable of selling and what do I need to go manage myself. I think bringing in that abstraction, making it much more simple for agents and admins to go manage a domain or line of business as opposed to multiple license classes and lines of authorities across resident, non-resident, different groupings, I think is one interesting step that I'm seeing. The other interesting feature or of product roadmap that I'm seeing is trying to see if DRLPs can go ahead and get auto-populated, which I know is still a challenge because that data does not exist anywhere, and everybody is trying to populate their data based on the best of their knowledge of what they submitted maybe 5 years ago, right? Apart from managing, obviously, individual producers, LOAs, all these producer licenses, InsureTrek also manages agency licenses, which means we take care of the agency's compliance and as a bracket and umbrella so that everybody under the agency is compliant. With agency licensing, I've seen a bunch of different complications come in. Obviously, we have affiliates coming in a few states, we have DRLPs coming in a few states. But I think the biggest challenge that I feel an agency ops manager today is having is not having the visibility if their Excel sheet is too populated to know what is the impact of an agent being a DRLP as opposed to an owner or an administrative person being a DRLP. Right, the impact of DRLP moving away from an agency has a big hole that gets created, and that void becomes a lot more complicated to fill. Jumping across different providers, going into an IPR, going and updating all your carriers about this information. So, I think that's something that we have been trying to solve, and we're improving it day by day. So.
Yeah, I think, and it's just one more thing to your point, where it's like you just don't think about that often. You don't think about, well, who's the DRLP and what licenses do they need to hold, and like you said, InsureTrek fully supports agency licenses as well, and so that's just one more piece to where in InsureTrek we tried to make it foolproof for you. So if you're needing to go apply or renew for your agency license, we try to make sure that that application is perfect before it's going to NIPR and before it's going to the state, because those are small things that, again, if you get that a little bit wrong, especially when you're messing with your agency licenses or your DRLP and those sorts of things, that can have a really big cascading effect. If you get that application wrong and someone at the state or someone at NIPR or NIPR doesn't totally like the way you submitted it. We have a partnership to where we can help facilitate getting registered agents in your non-resident states, because a lot of states require that. And so these are all things that we're just constantly building in, to make sure that the platform just supports all of these things and makes it to where you don't have to think about it.
What would be a good place for a new customer to start at InsureTrek, Kyle?